Hello and welcome to another exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Re-Watch-Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcasting Network, and it is episode number 034 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from September 19th, 1992, taped August 31st, 1992, at the Pikeville College Gym in Pikeville, Kentucky. My name is Arya, and welcome to the show. Now, in case you've never checked out our fine podcasting program before, what we do, it is really quite simple. We take a look at every episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, beginning with episode number 1 on February 1st, 1992, and go all the way to episode number 200 on November 26th, 1995. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the in-between, the off-between, the in-middle, the off-the-middle, the upper-middle, the bottom-middle, the opening, the main event, and pretty much everything you could possibly talk about in deep detail. We listen to the interviews, we talk about the promos, we see some angles, we watch some fun wrestling, and then at the end, we also tell you what else is happening in the world of wrestling this week. Because I may tell you things like, hey, it's September 19th, 1992, and you're like, okay, what the hell does that mean? What else was going on September 19th, 1992? That's what you have me for. And, a back issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, but ignoring that. Now, by the way, if you're enjoying this show, and I hope you are, and you're not just hate listening, because, if you are, why the hell would you be hate listening to this show? But anyway, if you're listening and you wish to support me without paying anything extra, please consider using my Amazon referral link, which is tinyurl.com/something else Amazon. You just use Amazon like normal. You don't pay an extra penny, but I get a small kickback, which helps me pay for upgrades and the admittedly small amount I have to pay to produce this show. Again, that's tinyurl.com/something else Amazon. Also, if you're not already listening to us on YouTube, you can check us out on YouTube. It's tinyurl.com/something else YouTube. It's all of our current shows when they post, not just the audio versions, but also the video versions. And by the video version, I don't mean you're staring at my ugly mug for 45 or 50 minutes. You're watching the actual show for 45 to 50 minutes while listening to me talk about it. Which, hey, I'd call that a good trade-off here, folks. I don't know about you, but I think it's a good trade-off. Anywho, plus on my YouTube channel, I'm also uploading my archive of something else in Smoky Mountain as much as I can, because there are some shows that are at the moment lost, but I'm going to find them, discover them, and re-upload them. But that's something to look forward to in the future. But again, something else on YouTube. It's tinyurl.com/something else YouTube. But let's dive into the show here. It is Smoky Mountain Wrestling, as we mentioned, September 19th, 1992, from Pikeville County Gym in Pikeville, Kentucky. Let's go to the intro of the show with Bob Caudle and Dutch Mantell.
Welcome to another exciting hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Professional wrestling the way it used to be and the way you like it. Hi fans, I'm Bob Caudle, and on today's show we're going to see the Stud Stable in action. Also Brian Lee. We're going to get an update on the situation between Ronnie Garvin and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. That has gotten to be an even more personal situation. Also, we're going to have two great main events for you this week. A non-title match between the Dirty White Boy and Tim Horner, and the tag title on the line. The Heavenly Bodies will defend it against the Rock and Roll Express. Dutch, it's great.
First of all, on Down and Dirty with Dutch, my special guest today will be Jimmy Cornette and Killer Kyle, and they're going to be talking about their quest to collect the $10,000 bounty placed on Brian Lee by a person or persons unknown. And we all know that Bob Armstrong is not Jimmy Cornette's strongest ally, so I think he's going to throw Kyle's name into the ring to help out the mystery man.
All right, fans, we're about ready with the action, so right now, let's go to the ring.
All right, so this week, in addition to the Stud Stable being in action and Primetime Brian Lee being here, the former Smoky Mountain champion, we are also going to get an update on the incredibly personal situation going on between Ron Garvin and Paul Orndorff. Plus, we're going to have our two main events. Our Smoky Mountain champion, Dirty White Boy, versus Tim Horner in a non-title match, which, if you recall, it's been building up for a few weeks. It's been building up since pretty much Dirty White Boy won the belt. Horner wants a title shot, and in order for him to get a title shot, he has to win a non-title match first against Dirty White Boy here today on TV. Plus, it is the Rock and Roll Express's one and only shot at the Smoky Mountain Tag Team titles as they challenge the Heavenly Bodies right here today on television. Plus, we're going to have Jim Cornette and Killer Kyle on Down and Dirty to talk about the Brian Lee bounty. And as they mentioned, we know Jim Cornette and Bullet Bob Armstrong are not BFFs, so it's very possible that Killer Kyle is going to be sent after primetime Brian Lee and that bounty. So we go to the ring for our first match. It is Rick Newson and Ben Jordan versus the Stud Stable, Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden with Stretcher. Now, Stretcher is not just a manager. Actually, Stretcher is not a manager, but an actual stretcher. Fuller and Gibson are pissed because the last time we saw them was when the Rock and Roll Express cost them their match last week with Nitro Danny Davis and Dixie Dynamite. The heels stormed to the ring and attacked their foes before they even removed their robes and hats. Jordan got his ass kicked for a minute, and the crowd did pop for Newson tagging in, but the pop died quickly when the Stud Stable cut him off pretty much immediately. Golden slammed Newson's arm into the ring post while Fuller and Jordan argued in the opposite corner, distracting the referee. Fuller did a wrist lock body slam and slapped on the double wrist lock. Fuller shoved down the referee, with which Bob and Dutch didn't even notice at first, and it ended up being a disqualification. So yes, Rick Newson and Ben Jordan with a disqualification win over Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. After the match, Fuller and Golden put Newson on a stretcher, carried him out of the ring, and then dumped him onto the ground. Gotta tell you, they lost. They quote unquote they lost to Rick Newson and Ben Jordan. And I know this is a horrible comparison, but like how Hulk Hogan did not put over Billy Kidman, Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden did not put over Rick Newson and Ben Jordan here. Anywho, and by the way, one of the many differences between these two is that Rick Newson and Ben Jordan aren't expected to semi-main event a pay-per-view in 2 weeks after all this. So after that, let's go to the interview area where Bob Caudle is with the Stud Stable.
And here they are moving in with us right here after I tell you, it was a wild and woolly, and we saw that stretcher.
This is the bag right here that's going to carry them rock and rollers out of here, brother. You may think you've done something hot there, Ricky Morton. You ain't done nothing, boy, but got yourself in a whole big bunch of trouble. We're going to get you in that ring and put you down where you belong right there. You know something? If you're an ignorant hillbilly sitting out here and you ain't figured out yet what's going on, listen up and I'm going to tell you. What it amounts to is we don't give a flip right now about winning any more than there right there. What we're out to do is hurt somebody. I'm going to tell you something, you little refugees from the Keebler factory, you couple of little dwarfs, that you are nothing with nothing in here, son. The #1 tag team in the world. And it's going to see you one place before it's done. You're going to ride this, baby. Both of you going to take
All right, fans, the Stud Stable. They say it's for the rock and roll. We'll be back right after this.
Dutch gives a standing ovation there at the end, and I gotta say, with Robert Fuller, I gotta say, I had to listen to the promo a couple times, and some of y'all are gonna think I'm a little crazy for having to listen to it a couple times to figure out what the hell he said. But I had to listen to it a couple times to figure out what the hell he said, and he called the Rock and Roll Express a couple rejects from the Keebler factory. And essentially they said they don't give a flip about winning anymore. They just want to hurt people. And I guess at the end of the day, that's all you need sometimes. And yeah, so they basically told you they're going to lose a lot of matches here, but they're here. They're going to try to keep their heat by hurting people, and we're building up to a stretcher match. If that wasn't painfully obvious here. So from there, we go to a video of a recent match in Kingsport, Tennessee, between Paul Orndorff and Ronnie Garvin. Orndorff, now Garvin, and this comes into play later on, Garvin has allegedly been throwing his towel to a fan at ringside. And apparently it's a big deal in the house shows, especially here. But Orndorff stopped Garvin from throwing his towel to a fan. He tied it into a knot and then began to choke Garvin with it. He ties Garvin to the top rope, so it's choking Garvin, because now we got to have multiple hanging angles here in this company here in the first year. The referee, to be honest, doesn't seem to care all that much about Paul Orndorff choking out Ronnie Garvin and trying to hang him on the rope. He's just counting to 5 and threatening to disqualify Orndorff. Mark Curtis runs in, and he's not even trying to help Garvin. He's allowing Ronnie to just hang there and choke. And finally, it took Nitro Danny Davis to run out and cut Garvin loose. So from here, let's go to some promos with Ronnie Garvin and Mr. Wonderful.
Come to ringside, taking a pocket knife out of his pocket, and has cut that towel in two to let Ronnie Garvin get some air back and keep him from hanging there. Here comes Mr. Wonderful.
Paul Orndorff, you take one look at this here. I think you went just a little too far. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is very personal to me. This is my ring jacket. Yeah, this is a towel, a simple towel that Ronnie Garvin throws to the fans every night, and you rob the fan of it. And I'm going to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, you're taking something personally from me. It did not belong to you. It is a green towel. I have red towels and yellow towels, and they're mine, and they're not yours. And you use it to choke me, and you tore it up to pieces. Well, I'm going to tell you something. You made a terrible, terrible, terrible mistake. I can't explain it to you, but you'll find out in the future. I'm going to take something from you. I'm going to make you beg and cry.
All right, fans, right here with Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. Paul, again, I got to ask you, they love you. I'm hearing everywhere that you may be the one that's got $10,000 out there as a bounty.
Listen, I told you once before, I don't have anything to do with that bounty. But Brian Lee, I'll tell you one thing. I'll take the $10,000. I'll stick you right here on TV. Matter of fact, next week I'm going to have him here on TV, and I am going to stick him right in the middle of the ring, and I'm going to take the $10,000, and I'm going to have a good time with it.
Now, what about Ronnie Garvin?
Who?
Ronnie Garvin.
Who?
Ronnie Garvin.
Let me tell you something right now. I'm about sick and tired of Ronnie Garvin. He's starting to get under Mr. Wonderful's skin, and when somebody gets under Mr. Wonderful's skin, something happens. And I'm going to stick Ronnie Garvin one way or the other too. I don't know what his problem is. He's telling me he's going to get personal. What is this thing with his towel? In just a few minutes, I'm going to show you people out there exactly what I did with that towel. I stuck it down his throat.
All right, fans, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. Don't go away. We'll be back right after we take time out for this word.
No one bothered to tell poor Mr. Wonderful that was before this, that they showed him sticking the towel down Ronnie Garvin's throat. So, to backtrack a little bit, Ronnie Garvin does sit here and he does talk about how important his towels are. And now here's the thing, though. Yeah, he was choked out by one towel. Why didn't he have another towel? Or why couldn't he give that towel away to somebody at ringside? Yeah, he got choked by it. But as we see, investigative work here in Smoky Mountain is not the strong suit of our higher-ups. So why wouldn't he just give away that towel? I'd call it a bit of a souvenir at this point. This is the towel that Paul Orndorff tried to strangle Ronnie Garvin with. I'd want that. I think most wrestling collectors would look at that as kind of a neat little thing to have. But, oh well. So he's going to make Orndorff beg and cry, which led to an Orndorff promo which was more about primetime Brian Lee and the bounty. And he vowed that, first of all, he has nothing to do with the bounty. But secondly, he's going to try and collect on it next week, apparently, and stick Brian Lee in order to get it. Then Cottle asks him about Ronnie Garvin. Who? Ronnie Garvin. Who? Ronnie Garvin. And Orndorff vows to stick Ronnie Garvin as well. So over on our regular Something Else program this week, Kamala teamed with the Great Kabuki to take on our old favorite Buddy Landell and our good friend Tim Horner. And Tim Horner is here on this show this week as well, a little less surprisingly. And he's got a promo to give. Yippee.
I have a thing to prove to you, dirty white boy. That's why you know that's why you're ducking and dodging. But I am going to prove to the people that I can beat you, and I'm going to get me a title shot.
Let me tell you something, Tim Horner. You done been out here crying to the promoters around here and forced me and the dirty white boy to get in there and give you a match. Well, let me tell you something. You're not good enough. You never was good enough, and there ain't no way in the world you can beat my man. You got it?
So short, sweet, to the point. Well, short and to the point for Horner, short, sweet, and to the point for Mr. Ron Wright. And, just a quick little 15-second promo by both representatives for this match here. And I mentioned, I wonder how many takes it took to do Horner's promo. He was tripping over his words there towards the end anyway. But then we had Mr. Ron Wright in a tank top with a blanket over him, and Dirty White Boy was using the blanket to shine the belt up, which, hey, the title belt looked nice and shiny, so whatever works, right? All right, so it's now time for our big first half of our double main event. It is Smoky Mountain champion Dirty White Boy with Mr. Ron Wright versus Tim Horner with no one in his corner. Non-title match, like we said, has been building up pretty much from the moment DWB won the title. If Horner wins here, he will get a title match. Dutch said that anyone who makes a nuisance out of himself and begs deserves a match. So good for Horner, I guess. Horner used a really nice arm drag that White Boy took a fantastic bump for. So, hey, we talk crap about Tim Horner, but we'll say the nice things. He's a really good wrestler. And so White Boy rolls out of the ring, and Mr. Wright checks his eye for something that may have gotten in it. Horner out wrestles Dirty White Boy early. Dutch's theory is that White Boy is allowing Horner to expend all of his energy and lull him into a false sense of security, which I guess at the end of the day is not, bad strategy, but, it is strategy here nonetheless. Horner blocks an Irish whip into the buckles and punches White Boy in the face, causing the champ to roll outside the ring and got consoled by his mentor. Dutch talked about how he hates people who talk and talk and talk about nothing. I do too, Dutch. I do too. White Boy drops Horner with a bulldog, but the match was over almost as fast as it began, as Horner wins with a sudden small package. Mr. Wright is shocked beyond belief. He falls out of his wheelchair and sells being injured, but it's too late. Even with that heart attack, Tim Horner now has a title shot at the Smoky Mountain Heavyweight title. And, I don't know how long it goes. I believe this is still the feud basically into December and January. It was like they go on for a little while here, folks, and we're in September. But, yeah. So Horner wins. This wasn't a match. It didn't set the world on fire. It was a fine match. And to be honest, I think it did a good job of, getting over not just that these two are very competent pro wrestlers, but it gets over that while Dirty White Boy is the champion, Tim Horner is an excellent wrestler. And if he uses the right move at the right time, he can get the win and win the championship belt here. And from here we go to Down and Dirty with Dutch And as we mentioned earlier, his guests this week are Jim Cornette and Killer Kyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Down and Dirty with Dutch. I'm Dutch Mantell, and you're not. And Jimmy, my special guest today, ladies and gentlemen, a close, dear friend of mine, and has been for a number of years. Let's give a big hand right now to Jimmy Cornette. Everybody stand up. They love you, Jimmy. They love you to death. Can't you hear? And I want to thank you for coming out on my show. You know, my ratings dropped last week with Bob Armstrong and Brian Lee. But I know you're talking about the wanted poster on $10,000 on Brian Lee's head. And I just got to ask you, do you know anything about this, Jimmy? I have to ask that question.
Yeah, I know a lot about it. I know that I'm going to make $10,000 because I know that my man Killer Kyle is going to collect the bounty here on this horse-headed goof. Now, let me tell you something. Bob Armstrong, you sticking your nose in my business again. It wasn't enough that you cost the Heavenly Bodies the tag team title once. We regained the belts. Now, in a rematch with the Fantastics, you're going to handcuff yourself to me at ringside. Well, let me just say this to you. You're going to find out, Bob Armstrong, why in the past, Dutch, as you know, they have called me Houdini Cornette. Now, my man Killer Kyle right here. Brian Lee, you think you're big. 6'8", 280 pounds. Cover the ground you walk on. Well, brother, 303 pounds after dinner last night. He's 6'4", and he is B.A. triple D bad. As a matter of fact, I took him to a restaurant. I ordered my steak. I said, hey, Killer, you want a steak? He said, I said, well, what do you want? Do you want it rare, medium, or well done? He said, just knock the horns off of it and bring it out on a leash, brother. That's how bad Killer Kyle is. And Brian Lee, that's in your future. And now, Rock and Roll Express, one thing, today on television, we're going to silence the critics. Right. We're going to defend the belts against you. And once that you have your one chance at the title and you emerge unsuccessful, then you're never going to see those belts again. You're never going to see my men again. You see the difference, Rock and Roll? Heavenly Bodies, they like the big girls. They're not like you and charter members of the Woody Allen Dating Club. So we're going to find out who the men and who the boys are here today on television.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Killer Kyle. Ladies and gentlemen, there you heard it. Jimmy Cornette sending Killer Kyle after $10,000. Fans, don't go away. Tag team title match coming up. The Heavenly Bodies against the Rock and Roll Express. Don't go away. We'll be back in 2 minutes. If you people don't shut up, I'm coming out there and slapping every one of you. Shut up.
Okay, that was quite the line there, and I'll be honest, the Woody Allen line, that was quite the line there, and I know, like, I forget the time frame. I guess this would be around the time that the original allegations came out about Woody Allen and him and Mia Farrow's adopted child and all that shit. HBO did actually an excellent documentary series about it, which will go into far more detail than I can here on this here podcasting program. But that's that Woody Allen allegedly liked them young. We'll just say that. So back to our wrestling discussion here on our wrestling program. Down and Dirty with Dutch is with, as we mentioned, Jim Cornette and Killer Kyle. Corny's here to talk about a number of things. He talks about primetime Brian Lee and mentions that he's about to make, he's about to make $10,000 because, damn, don't ask what the hell that happened inside me, but I apologize for that. Anyway, Jim Cornette says he's about to make $10,000 because Killer Kyle is here to collect the bounty on this horse-headed goof. He then turns his attention to Bullet Bob Armstrong and how Bob screwed the Heavenly Bodies out of the tag team titles back on Fire on the Mountain by making himself the referee for the barbed wire cage match. And this is where I get they have to plug their upcoming matches with the Fantastics, but they basically tell you here that the Heavenly Bodies win, or at least the Heavenly Bodies are going to leave with the tag team titles today, because they don't really even mention what would happen if the Rock and Roll Express won the title. It's just, we're going to have these matches against the Fantastics for the title, where Bullet Bob Armstrong is going to be handcuffed to Jim Cornette at ringside, prevent him from interfering. That gives the Fantastics an even shot at winning the title, and all that happy, fun horse shit. And they don't even pretend that, something could happen and the Rock and Roll Express could win the belts. And if they won, would they get matches with the Fantastics? Would they then wrestle the Heavenly Bodies again? Would it be a 3-way? Whatever. Because, spoiler alert, well, we'll get to that in a few minutes. Anyway, so he mentions Killer Kyle is so big and bad, he orders a steak by knocking the horns off the cow and eating it from there. Gotta tell you, that's not me, folks. That is a rare steak. I like my cow to be dead and completely dead when I eat it. Corny says the Rock and Roll Express, as we mentioned earlier, are members of the Woody Allen Dating Club, which, if it's a joke people got, you wouldn't be able to say it in 2023. It's just, you can't accuse a babyface of being a pedophile on professional wrestling television in 2023. And anywho, he reiterates that today is the Rock and Roll Express's one and only title shot. We'll see how well that goes. So we go to commercial, we plug the Dream Match contest, which we mentioned there's going to be dream matches throughout the month of November. And the people who send in the dream matches that are chosen get prize packs. And are entered into a chance to win the grand prize, a trip to Thanksgiving Thunder in Knoxville, Tennessee. So from here, we come back, and Bullet Bob Armstrong is at the announce position, and he wants to talk to Bob Caudle about the Brian Lee situation.
Smoky Mountain Commissioner Bob Armstrong, Commissioner, regardless of what you're doing, the wanted posters are still showing up with a $10,000 reward. For the bounty on Brian Lee. The stalker is still stalking him, and I think you feel like you need even more security around.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why tonight, before Brian Lee's match, we have extra security guards at the front door, at the back door, and around the dressing room door. We're going to see that nobody gets in tonight without being seen. Now, a few weeks ago, he got arrested in Knoxville, this stalker, and was out within 3 hours. Nobody knows who went to bail. But we're going to cut out that problem tonight before it ever happens, Bob, and I'm going to the back door right now and guard that one myself.
All right, fans, and Brian Lee, he's going to be on action right here. So now let's go to the ring.
So Bullet Bob is going to go guard the back door. They have extra security all over the place to make sure nobody comes in who doesn't belong there. We'll see how well that works out for good old Bullet Bob Armstrong. As we go into our next match here, at Primetime Brian Lee is in action. The former Smoky Mountain champion going to one-on-one. Again, one of those things that's super easy for me to say. One-on-one with Mike Sampson. Yes, the Mike Sampson. And the Mike Sampson attacks Primetime Brian Lee from behind to start the match. Lee did a leapfrog and a drop kick, which will always look impressive when a big man does it. And Lee won immediately with the cancellation. This man does not get paid by the hour. And apparently security didn't get paid very well because outran the stalker, a.k.a. Caucasian Abdullah the Butcher. He was followed out. And by the way, the stalker, a.k.a. Caucasian Abdullah the Butcher, attacks Primetime Brian Lee. Outrun Canadian champion Newton Steffi, followed by Ben Jordan and Robbie Eagle, all of whom got their asses kicked by the stalker. Tim Horner, Dixie Dynamite, and Nitro Danny Davis all ran in and teamed up to get the stalker to leave. So that is going to ask a few questions, because Bob Armstrong said nobody is getting in who doesn't belong here. He said that he's personally watching the back door. Does that mean that this stalker that whomever is behind this is in the Smoky Mountain dressing room, maybe? Maybe not. I guess we're going to have to see because, I mean, at the end of the day, who's putting up all these posters? The calls are coming from inside the house, everybody. Keep an eye out. If you're Primetime Brian Lee, I don't know who hates you this much. Well, I guess it's not even so much hating Primetime Brian Lee because we've mentioned it's someone who's got a grudge against Bullet Bob Armstrong, and they're going to take it out on his golden-haired boy here, his fair boy. They're taking it out on Brian Lee here and see what's going on. And I swear I know how to talk. You know, I've been doing this show now for a year and a half or so. So we then get our main event. It is Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions, the Heavenly Bodies, with Jim Cornette and Killer Kyle versus The Rock and Roll Express. I didn't know The Rock wrestled this early in 1992 and teaming with some guy named Roll Express. And, oh, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. It's Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. It's the Rock and Roll Express, not The Rock and his teammate Roll Express. Okay, I apologize. I got that one backwards here, folks. So there's time for a 13 to 14 minute match. So this could be pretty good here. Cornette, of course, reminded the fans, and you know, Cornette being a nice man here, he understands sometimes, you know, the fans, you know, it's easy to get caught up in the commotion of what's going on. You don't always remember everything happening all the time, always. So he's nice enough to remind the fans that Stan Lane, it'd be weird if it was Stan Lee, that Stan Lane has a busted eardrum and to please not make any noise. And the fans, of course, made as much noise as they could. And of course, as we mentioned before, that all this was done to give an excuse for Stan Lane to be wearing a headgear to hold down his really bad toupee. So as we've mentioned in the past, this is a preview of the next 2 years of our lives. The Rock and Roll Express are feuding with some form of the Heavenly Bodies until the summer of 94. Literally. No joke. Just, there are other teams that come in and out. There are different angles shot, but this is a consistency here, folks. And it's a consistent feud that ends up in both WCW and the WWF next year, which is just really fucking weird at the end of the day when you think about it here. So Gibson gets a momentary advantage, but Lane kicked away at him for a minute until Gibson hit an enziguri. In came Morton, and we got the faces running wild with hip tosses and drop kicks to both opponents. The Bodies rolled out of the ring to regroup, but apparently not enough, as they both got back in the ring and both got laid out by Morton. Pritchard was so stunned that he kept going to the Rock and Roll corner to get a tag. Stan Lane and Jim Cornette kept distracting the referee, so Morton and Gibson kept coming in and out, slapping on arm bars on Pritchard without tagging out. Shockingly, shock of all shocks, surprise of all surprises, the Bodies got the heat on Ricky Morton. And in this case, they got the heat on Ricky Morton by when Stan Lane yanked his hair from the apron and Cornette hit him in the throat with a tennis racket behind the referee's back. Morton used the sunset flip on both men and made the hot tag to Gibson. Gibson runs wild briefly until Killer Kyle trips him. Mark Curtis doesn't see this, but just puts two and two together because his back was turned to this, but all of a sudden, you know, Killer Kyle's there. Robert Gibson is laying on the ground. The guy is smart. He's got some brains here and figured out what the hell happened here. He throws Killer Kyle out. Mark Curtis, like I say, throws him out even though he didn't see it. If it helps, neither did Bob or Dutch. And they also didn't see Mark throw him out. They basically just say that Killer Kyle's walking away from the ring. Cornette gets knocked out by Morton outside the ring. When outstoled the Strud stable, outstrolled the Stud stable, Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller, who yanked down the top rope when Gibson ran the ropes, causing Gibson to crash to the floor. They roll him back in, and Tom Pritchard pins Robert Gibson in the Rock and Roll Express's one and only shot at the Smoky Mountain Tag Team titles, because I'm sure you're going to believe that. The Heavenly Bodies get the pin. The Heavenly Bodies are still your Smoky Mountain Tag Team champions. So this match was good and did a great job of whetting your appetite for what these two teams would eventually give us. For now, it was just a damn good TV match. And so to finish off the show this week, Bullet Bob is coming back out to talk some more. Let's go to him now.
Now, Commissioner Bob Armstrong. Commissioner, I tell you, you're having a full house, it looks like. Everything's happening, any doubt about that. That match that we just saw up there, there was no reason for the stud stable to come out and interfere in that match.
Bodies were flying everywhere, but I saw what Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden did.
Yeah.
So they're going to be fined $500 apiece for that, no doubt about it. And I want to tell them that Rock and Roll Express will get another shot at the championships. I'm ordering the Heavenly Bodies to do that.
Jim Cornette said he was only going to give them one chance and one opportunity, and that was it. That they were only going to get one chance. That's what Cornette said.
Talk about one. I want to file an official protest for the Rock and Roll Express. That no good stinking bleach blonde punk Ricky Morton hit me in my face and could have severely injured me. I want to file a protest. I want to see him suspended. Shut up, you welfare cases. I want to see him suspended from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And they ain't getting another title match. I said one chance. I asked for the match to begin with. One chance, that's what they got. They didn't win. They fell all over themselves, and we ain't giving them another chance at those belts.
Well, I got news for you, brother. By you jumping up there and him hitting a face that a mother couldn't love, you gave them another chance. They're going to get another chance for the titles. Rock and Roll will get their shot. And remember this, the Fantastics have already signed 2 more matches with you guys, and I'm going to be at ringside. Only the difference this time, I'm going to be handcuffed to you, big boy, and we're going down to the wire.
You see that? You see what he's trying to do to us? He's trying to cheat us out of the belts every chance he gets because he can't stand it, just like these people can't stand it. You're all jealous of greatness. Well, let me tell you something. I am not, I repeat not, going to give the Rock and Roll Express another title match. This thing will be tied up in court till we got beards down to our crotch.
All right, fans, we'll see just what plays out in this in the weeks to come here on Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Next week, a bounty match for $10,000. Primetime Brian Lee against Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Next week in the $10,000 banner match, and we'll see you then.
So that was a strong promo to end the show there, I thought. You know, they're trying to give you a reason why they're baiting and switching here. And this is one of the issues that we're going to have a lot, unfortunately, with Smoky Mountain Wrestling. For as fun as it is and as great as it is over the next 2 years, they bait and switch a lot. They give you stipulations and then walk back on it. And this is one of those times that, I mean, it helps in this situation that nobody believed that this was going to be the Rock and Roll Express's only shot at the title, especially when they didn't win the damn title. So in that case, it kind of helps it, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's falsely advertising a stipulation. If you tuned into this show thinking, oh my God, this is the only time, the only time that these two teams are going to wrestle, especially if the Express doesn't win, you've already been fucked, you know, before the show goes off the air. So you kind of gotta go tongue-in-cheek here, except the fact that I don't think anybody believed that that's what would happen. It's possible that some people thought that the Rock and Roll Express were going to actually win the belts. However, they essentially told you that that wasn't going, that, you know, I don't even know what to say about this. But it's like, yeah, by building up that the Fantastics were getting another title shot, and apparently they're getting 2 more title shots, they were basically telling you that, yeah, you know, the Heavenly Bodies are going to stay champions. And so it's like, well, how are you going to get out of this stipulation? And they're just going to get out of the stipulation by just doing it anyway. So I'm sorry again. It's one of those things. And like I said, it happens way more than it should over the next 3 years. And it's the most frustrating part of this company. And I think, there are a lot of reasons why this company goes out of business and why a lot of reasons why, the money drops, especially in that last year to the point where where they ended up, not making it. But yeah, and it's like, it's sad. And it's too bad that Corny was doing this at the time. And I mean, everyone makes mistakes. No booker is perfect. And, we've talked about mistakes over on Mid South Wrestling. We talk about something else. You could watch, AEW Dynamite, as you're listening to this last night, you could have been watching Dynamite and seen some iffy things happening. And it's the same thing here. It's like, no wrestling's perfect, but you got to study, learn what works, learn what didn't work, and go from there. And unfortunately, because to some extent, this does actually work. Because, like I said, nobody believed the stipulation to begin with. And also, and this is also important, nobody remembers this stipulation. And I guess that's going to be one that's going to work out in their favor here because, they're going to do rematches with the Rock and Roll Express. They're going to draw reasonably well. And yeah. So, unfortunately, Corny sees whatever success he gets out of these falsely advertising this stipulation and thinks he can keep going, which it doesn't always work. We'll just say that. But Bob says they're going to fine Fuller and Golden $500 each. Plus, they're going to give Rock and Roll another title match. Corny comes in, who wants Ricky Morton suspended for hitting him. Bob tells them they're getting a title shot because Corny tried to interfere. Cornette ends the show screaming about they'll never get another title shot, and he will take this to the courts to prevent it. All right, then. And of course, next week, as brought up earlier this week, is going to be Paul Orndorff versus Primetime Brian Lee in a bounty match. Can Paul Orndorff get the $10,000? Can he injure Primetime Brian Lee and take him out? I guess we're just going to have to wait and see here. But with that, we are 34 down and we have 166 episodes to go. So hooray! Hooray, hooray, hooray. We are chugging along here, and I hope, like I said, I hope everyone's enjoying these shows because I'm enjoying doing them. And I know sometimes, especially like it feels like I'm just doing things for my own gratitude, and I really do appreciate anybody who has left feedback, especially through YouTube, and either positive or negative. Hey, if you think the show sucks, please tell me that you think the show sucks, and especially tell me why you think the show sucks. And if it's something I can work on, great. But it's one of those things where you're just telling me the show sucks because the show just sucks. I can't really work on improving when I have feedback that just says that I suck. For instance, somebody on YouTube pointed out a few episodes ago, I introduced the show and called it Mid-South Wrestling, which nobody noted until this one person on YouTube did. So, yeah, if I screw up, I make a mistake, I suck, let me know, and let me know why I suck and what I did to screw up, and I will work on it here, folks. I promise you are not going to hurt my feelings. I have been called worse names than most of y'all can imagine. So from now, we like to finish a show, like we mentioned earlier. We finish a show by talking about what else is happening in the world of wrestling. Because like I mentioned, I can tell you September 19th, 1992 until I'm blue in the face. And you may sit here and go, okay, what happened on September 1992? Or what else is going on September 19th, 1992? We need an idea here. Like, okay. So the main story coming out of this week is WCW's ratings continue to bottom out. With Saturday night this week, the 605 show, dropping to a 1.7 rating. WWF, by the way, was doing no better. So it wasn't just WCW dropping to low ratings. WWF was getting low, and so like there were like no excuses, especially since WWF's primetime wrestling is a 2.4 rating, which okay is better than a 1.7 rating, ain't no doubt about that. But you know, primetime wrestling aired the big Ric Flair Randy Savage WWF title change that we talked about a few weeks ago, where Flair re-won the championship cummerbund. And it was promoted for all weekend that they were going to air that match, and it only did a 2.4. So wrestling in general is incredibly unpopular, and spoiler alert, it's going to get worse. So Butch Reed had just returned to WCW a couple weeks ago at the Clash of the Champions. They were teasing a 4-person group with Jake Roberts, Cactus Jack, the Barbarian, and Butch Reed, which, when it comes to 4-man groups, that one is a little out there here, folks. I must tell you that. But Butch Reed is already gone. He no-showed a TV taping without calling ahead of time. And in one of those weird little trivia stats, Bill Watts offered the spot that Butch Reed just left to Mondo Clean. Now, there might be some head scratching, wondering who the fuck is Mondo Clean? And there might even be people going, why does that name sound so familiar? I know it. I know the name, but I don't know why I know the name. And it's not just because it's another corny name in wrestling, which, I mean, it is, but it turns out to be future WrestleCrap inductee Damien Demento, of all people. Now, as I think you all know, Mondo Clean goes to the WWF as Damien Demento and does not take Bill Watts' deal to start in WCW. And even bigger than losing out on Damien Demento, and I mean, I'm sure Bill Watts, when he lost his job or quit or got fired or whatever the fuck happened, in a few months, I'm sure he was kicking himself and thinking about how this could have been the one thing that turned around the company. However, something of almost equal importance was going on at the time. Contract negotiations with the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott Steiner. Now, as we've mentioned, and has been hurting the company for a little bit. One second. Pardon me there. I couldn't get to the mute button fast enough. But as we've been mentioning here, the last few weeks, Bill Watts is trying to cut costs any ways he can, and he's restructuring as many contracts as he can and turning them into per night deals. And one of the many problems with per night deals is there's no guaranteed number of dates. So if you're offering the Terry Taylors of the world $300 a night, but not saying, how many dates you're getting, contractually, Terry Taylor could be under contract for 3 years and not make a penny, and it's okay because that's what his contract says. Now, it's obviously going to raise some eyebrows. And unfortunately, again, this was at the time too, because the WWF's contracts were still doing the contracts where the only guaranteed money you got was like $75 or something per TV taping, which with how many TV tapings they did, it amounted like $2,200 or something like that. So, I mean, it is consistent, but at the same time, when you're in a wrestling war and you're pissing off, your, crew already, and now you're trying to take away their money, the money that they know they have, the money that they're guaranteed to have. And it's part of the reason why they've chosen your company to begin with, even with the bullshit going on. And you're taking that away to give them, money for a unknown number of dates. It's going to piss people off. And the Steiner brothers are being offered $1,000 a night. Now, it's always the good and the bad with all this shit, because $1,000 a night, hey, I'd like $1,000 a night to wrestle. And part of it too is that conservatively, if they went to the WWF, it's in the range of what they could be making working in the WWF. So Bill Watts is playing his cards here and going, okay, you can either stay with the devil you know and make $1,000 a night, or go to the devil you don't know and maybe make that, because $1,000 a night is still like a guarantee, even if there's no guaranteed number of dates. So, you could be going to the WWF where if you work and if they draw, you'll make $1,000 a night. But there's no guarantee that will happen. So right now we're at a contractual impasse. And speaking of our contractual impasses, the dispute with Brian Pillman has apparently been settled. However, despite that, the light heavyweight division has officially been shelved for at least a year. And of course, this is the light heavyweight division that Brian Pillman is a huge part of. In fact, you could say he's the only part, or really the key part of it, because, the only other great light heavyweight that they've had, or at least the great light heavyweight working the light heavyweight style, is Jushin Liger, who spends most of his year in Japan. But so the light heavyweight division is being shelved for now. It ends up being shelved for about 4 years. But yeah. So that is going to do it here with the Smoky Mountain Re-Watch-Along Project. Again, I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it. And again, like I said, if you didn't enjoy it, please tell me why, things I can improve on, and I'll be happy to see what I can do. But thank you all for listening. Check out the Something Else show, and we'll talk to you again next week.